So how excited are you that we're on a history movie slash show slash musical?
We officially needed to see Hamilton because the wait list for tickets to Broadway is a billion years.
Yeah, and I'm happy that we saw the original cast. I still want to see it live, but I'm happy we saw the original cast.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like that's the best version.
Well, the original Broadway cast. There were other off-Broadway casts before, and anyway, I'm not getting into semantics here, but you know what I mean. Okay, so since we're doing history, guys, you know this is basically Tyler's History Podcast. Here we are. I can't do anything about this. This is what I get for letting him make choices. So since we have to do that, I thought it would be fun to test you a little bit on history / your actual knowledge of the show, because if you guys don't know, Tyler does his own version of research for these podcasts. Basically, whatever he's interested in, and then nothing outside of that. So I feel confident that he hasn't gone this far, even though it's history-based.
That's entirely possible.
It's entirely possible that I have things written down that you've probably never seen before in your research, even though you might have researched longer than me. Yeah?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Okay. So
I get very tunnel vision on things.
I mean, who knew? I mean...
All right.
So, here we are. Richard Morris, a historian, in 1973, identified the Founding Fathers as 7 central figures. Who are they?
So, Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, Hamilton. Let's see. I just had it a second ago. It's Washington, Jefferson, Hamilton, Franklin, John Adams, and then...
You're missing 2 at the moment.
James Madison.
Yes.
And the last one...
The last one, good luck to you, because I've never heard of this person.
Is he in Hamilton?
I'm not going to answer that because you know my follow-up question, so no, I'm not going to answer that.
Given that we just saw it, I'm going to say John Jay.
Yes, you are correct. Now, I'm going to show my ignorance about history and would say that because I'm from Massachusetts, John Hancock was something that I thought of, but yeah.
Well, he signed the Declaration of Independence, but he was, to my knowledge, less involved in the drafting of the Constitution and actual government thereafter.
But I'm from Massachusetts, so he's like a founder in my head. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, you should, now that you've seen the show, know who was in the show currently, like that made it into the show of those founding fathers.
Yeah.
Who was written into the show that did not make the cut?
Well, Washington was in there. Jefferson, Hamilton, Madison. I'm going to say John Jay was not in there.
Benjamin Franklin was not in there.
Damn.
He was written in, and I think we might talk about this later, but there were things called Hamil drops where they released songs that were Hamilton related. Mm-hmm. And one of the songs that was released through that was a song that was written for Ben Franklin. It was actually given to an artist that they made a song out of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
So there you go. That's your little history quiz. I thought it would be fun.
Now that I think about it, I don't think John Adams is in it either, technically.
He's mentioned for sure, but I don't know if he has.
Cast.
Yeah, I don't. But my point was somebody who was written in but didn't make the cut. So there you go. All right then. So you want to tell everybody what your choice is now that we've kind of made it clear, but you know.
So this week I had to do Hamilton because I've been dying to see it. And
it's on Disney Plus.
It's on Disney Plus for free. If you don't have Disney Plus, get Disney Plus. It's worth it.
Because your lovely wife bought it for you for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, my wife is wonderful.
Just saying.
She also bought me a shirt that says Yoda One That I Want for Valentine's Day because she bought me Disney Plus for The Mandalorian. So best wife ever, really.
Aw, that's so sweet. You have to say that on our anniversary week podcast, but you know.
Yeah, also fortuitous. Yeah. I'm Tyler.
I'm Shay.
And this is Cinematically Correct. And again, this week is Hamilton.
Yeah. So do you want to get into your beer really quickly before we dive into the all things history?
I do want to get into the beer. I did not take Stork's suggestion only because I couldn't find it.
Yeah, so Stork, I promise you that if we can find it at some point, we will make him drink it, even if it's not related, and we'll just throw it in there.
Yes.
He does have a picture of it on his phone.
I do. The brewery was at the place we went, or the beer company, but not the actual style, unfortunately. So this is Sam Adams, because Sam Adams is a revolutionary patriot, obviously.
And we're from Massachusetts, but, you know.
It's also the Sam 76, so 1776. I mean, how do you go wrong with the year that we declared independence?
You don't. You don't go wrong, but you're also going to hate it, and I'm going to love it.
That's actually way lighter than I was expecting. It's not bad.
I mean, the beer looks very chilled, which looks delightful.
Given that it's ungodly hot in our house, yeah, it's... I had it low-key. I had it stashed in the freezer for an hour just to get it ice cold.
Well, I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Okay, so we need to move into the brief synopsis because we know you're going to get taken away with this, so...
So brief synopsis is going to be 20 minutes long. Got it.
Please don't. God help us.
Brief synopsis.
This is a musical about the life of Alexander Hamilton, one of the minor but hugely important founding father, or less well-known founding fathers before this musical came out. Mm-hmm. He was not as well-known as Jefferson or Washington or Ben Franklin. The top three, really.
Yeah, it's fair.
And it follows his life through the Revolution and the establishment of the government that we know today.
Yeah.
That's
I guess that's fair. Okay. So, what we need to do is we need to go into characters. Now, I'm going to say that as much as I enjoy musicals, we have not seen a Broadway show or any kind of musical in a long time. So, I am a little bit ignorant to some of the actors. So, I want to just kind of put that out there that I know some of them are probably very well known and I just don't know them.
I mean, the last thing we went to was a off Broadway with my sister for Little Shop of Horrors.
Yeah, like off. So
tiny little community theater.
I mean, it was great.
It was great.
Wonderful. But so just keep that in mind that we understand that these people are probably more well known than we know. But okay, so I'll go with just like the first few and then, maybe jump around a little. Daveed Diggs, I think that's how you say it, played Lafayette and Jefferson. One of my favorites, for sure. Like, he was amazing, and his rapping or singing or both was, like, incredible. Like, they all were. Like, all of their voices.
It was spectacularly on point for the whole production.
Yeah. Now, I have not seen him outside of this. I saw that he was very well known for Blind Spotting, which I've heard lots of great things about, but I've never seen it, so I can't say anything about it. Now, do you know him?
I didn't recognize him from anything. Having said that, he is my connection to Lord of the Rings.
Oh, dear Lord, here we go.
So, he was in the TV show Snowpiercer with Sean Bean, who is Boromir in Lord of the Rings. Done.
Wonderful.
Yep.
So, as for his characters, I enjoyed both of them. They were very energetic, and they were just, like, really fun to watch. Like, I will admit at the beginning of the show, things felt very slow, and I was kind of having a hard time getting into what was going on, because I'm not into history very much, so I didn't really know. But when his character came in, it started getting a lot more fun, and like, okay, I can feel this, like, I'm in it.
I mean, his Lafayette rap was probably the fastest part of the whole production, and that was the one that I had the hardest time following on. I'm pretty sure I missed a couple lines.
I'm sure we'll probably have to rewatch to pick up some stuff. But that said, it's hard to really talk about like how he did as the characters and stuff like that, because then we have to get into like the characters and like who they are and all of that. But Lafayette didn't have much of an arc. He was just kind of there to show that he was the French person who helped out, and then we didn't help in return type situation. But they didn't really have much arc there. As for Jefferson, he was just basically the opposite of Hamilton. I mean...
Right. It's opposed based off their perspective because of where they come from. So Jefferson was from Virginia in the South. Hamilton originally from the Caribbean, but he moved to New York City, and he was more in line with New York and the New England area.
Right. So I feel like ideals-wise, I'm on Hamilton's side. But likability-wise, I'm on Jefferson's side. So, there's that. Okay. Renee Elise Goldsberry, she's actually the only person that while on stage I recognized her. I kept saying she has to be famous. I know her from something. So she played Angelica. She played the sister of Hamilton's wife.
Yep.
And I recognized her from The Good Wife because I was obsessed with that show. And I think I talk about it quite a bit on this podcast.
Every podcast episode. Every single one. You should just replace Gilmore Girls with Good Wife.
Yeah, because it is also my Gilmore Girls reference because obviously I've said before, Logan, that was Rory's boyfriend, was the on The Good Wife. I do have another one down the road. You're welcome. But because I recognized her, I was like, I need to know why I recognize her. So.
Great.
Anyway, I loved her character. I loved that it added, like, drama to everything and also felt more, like, real. Like, he wasn't just this wonderful, like, political person. There was real things happening and not great things.
It added depth. It added humanity to just the perspective that we are getting to see.
Right. And I feel like love and lust and all of that are very real things that we all deal with. And I'm glad that they acknowledged that.
And if I was to make a grading scale, I think she was the best singer of the cast. I think
she was definitely up there. I don't know if I can make
they're all so good. It's
call.
hard to differentiate, but like I just think personally I enjoyed her singing performances the most.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to mention this one quickly because he's my favorite and I have to mention him, but Jonathan Groff played King George. My hands down favorite character. Hilarious. Can't even tell you how much I love him. He was also in Frozen. He played Kristoff. Amazing voice. Like, amazing voice. And just hilarious. Da-da-da-da. You know? Just saying. Okay. Then we do have to mention Leslie Odom Jr. because he plays Aaron Burr. I mean, we can't ignore that. He's amazing. He has an incredible voice as well.
He does. We've actually also already done a podcast with him in the movie.
His name sounds so familiar, but I couldn't place him.
So you don't know which podcast movie we've done?
I'm not sure. No, I couldn't place him.
Murder on the Orient Express.
Oh.
He's the doctor.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, he looked very familiar to me. But no, I couldn't place him. But he was fantastic.
Yeah.
But he plays Aaron Burr, which is the person who killed Hamilton.
The damn fool that shot him?
Yeah, and I love that they played it that way, where it wasn't like a revenge thing, like a story where it's like this guy finally got his revenge or whatever. No, he played it as like he was a flawed human who did something that he thought in the time was the right thing to do, but he regrets. And I liked that they did that and they put that there because he said something like, I'm the villain in your history books or something, and really he's a person that made a mistake and did something that he wished he didn't. So I thought that was a really good way to portray that. Obviously the last person that we should mention, while there are other great actors and actresses, and we will be mentioning other characters later on, the other one we have to mention is obviously Lin-Manuel Miranda. We can't not. I mean,
the person who wrote, directed it, then starred in it as the central character. Like, you can't not...
Right, we can't just be like, and anyways... So, he plays Hamilton. You can say what that is.
What, Alexander Hamilton? He's one of the founding fathers. He just
is? I mean, financing you has to want to say something. Come on.
Well, there's so many achievements that we'll get into some of them in my history, but I don't want to go too overboard.
I'm sorry. I'm stepping on your toes, but...
Immigrant, son of a bastard, like, born out of wedlock, which was a scandal back then. Basically... the pick yourself up by your bootstraps person that actually did it rather than being gifted $1 million small loan by his father.
Okay, well, all right.
So yeah, it's just...
we went there. Okay.
Became a founding father, was in all the talks, first Secretary of the Treasury, was instrumental in monetary policy for the new government. Like, it was a huge deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's that. We will be talking more about the character and actor later on, so we don't, we're passing over it. But anyway, is there anybody else you particularly wanted to bring up?
I mean, no, that's the majority of the people. I mean, there's James Madison, who was involved in the founding father, but
you just want to mention him because he was a huge actor.
he was enormous. And well, James Madison also wrote the Federalist Papers, which Alexander Hamilton wrote most of them.
Yeah, Alexander Hamilton wrote 51 of them.
Yes, of 85.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean the whole cast was superb.
Yeah, and we will be talking about more of them. But anyway, okay. So going into this, obviously we'd heard of Hamilton, clearly.
Yeah.
You also had somebody in your family who saw it on Broadway, right?
Yes, my sister was lucky enough to get invited with a family friend to go see Hamilton on Broadway.
Okay, so expectation versus reality. How did you feel about it going into it, and how do you feel about it now?
I mean, it was fantastic. My expectation is that it was going to be excellent because everyone couldn't stop raving about it, and I think it met expectations. But it's one of those things where everything was set so high, you're at a losing situation right out of the gate, because if you meet expectations, that's not enough.
Right, you want to exceed expectations.
You have to exceed expectations, and the
expectations were astronomical.
It's gone. It's already out of your hands.
Yeah. So I'll say that I didn't have a lot of background on what it was going to be. I knew it was a rap and I knew it was history based, but like other than that, I didn't know anything. So I thought it was really good. I think it's going to take me a few watches to really appreciate it, because the beginning I was kind of like, okay, I don't know what's happening. I was kind of bored. And now that I've done a little bit more research and I understand more of the characters, I think I could appreciate a lot more. So I think it's one of those, like, it's going to take a few times, but then I think it'll meet or exceed my expectations. So, there's that.
Okay.
All right. Hamilton character.
Yeah.
So we're getting into it.
Go.
So, first of all, what do you think he was portrayed as a hero? Do you think he was portrayed as somebody to actually like? How did you feel about his character, like the way he was portrayed? Because I didn't know I knew who Hamilton was, but like I didn't know much about him. Like he was a founding father, and what? Like I didn't know anything. This is the first time I've really seen.
So it was interesting because Hamilton is one of the secondary founding fathers behind the big four. Mm-hmm. Franklin, Jefferson, Washington, and
John
Adams. Those are the people that everyone knows, like, because they were presidents, and then, well, not Ben Franklin, but all the other ones were presidents.
But he like invented like electricity or something.
The whole kite in the key story, yeah.
Yeah, so
he gets included.
He gets like something. He's like important or something.
He gets included just because of that story. But he's tremendously important. I think that they did a very good job of illustrating what a significant impact he had, but he is a person. No one is perfect. Every historical person has some kind of skeleton in their closet. There's no perfect person.
That's fair.
It doesn't exist.
All right, so I'm going to ask you something,
yeah.
And based on something you said earlier, and this came to me.
Yeah.
So you made a joke earlier, and you said a certain president learned from him. Did you not?
I said Bill Clinton came after?
Yeah, you did. So my question to you, though, is...
Which is a much more clever turn of phrase than what you just said?
Well, I was getting somewhere. So my question to you would be...
Yeah.
I don't know your specific opinion about what Bill Clinton did and how it all happened and the scandal and all of that, but it's something that's very current to us, something in our time period that we can remember as being a big scandal. So how do you think the Hamilton scandal compared to the Bill Clinton scandal, and how do you think like the public reaction was in comparison? Because obviously there was no social media or any of that stuff back then, but Hamilton went about it and made it public, so...
It was basically the same. Like, we haven't...
Was it, though? Because I don't remember Hamilton, like, having that kind of blowback.
He had to resign. He could never become president because of the stigma.
That's true. See, I didn't know that
Yeah.
part. They could never become president.
Well, there's no rule preventing you from being president. They just would never have chosen him. Like,
interesting.
They just... You got a black stain on your record.
It's a scarlet letter?
Yeah, exactly.
I had to. Sorry. I just had to.
So it was the end of his political
So what you're saying, what I'm hearing, is we haven't progressed at all from that.
Not really. I mean,
apparently, sex scandals still.
To be fair, Bill Clinton was basically trapped into that conversation, and then he was impeached for lying
under oath,
which is a crime, and you should just deal with the messy complications for admitting it and being honest.
Entrapment's also a crime. Just wanted to let you know if you didn't know.
I did know that actually, but
regardless of the fact, so what we've learned from this is we as a country haven't learned from that.
What we've learned is we haven't learned is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm hearing. Because would you, if Hamilton had lived long enough, do you think he would have made a good president?
I mean, he was very clearly bright, and by all accounts, other than the extramarital affair, he was a stand-up guy.
It sounded like it, yeah, and it sounded like he was kind of an example of the American dream, the coming over from nothing and building yourself up and kind of, making your way in a world that nobody handed to you.
Right.
So, I mean, I think he would have been great, and just as I think Bill Clinton, for all intents and purposes, was a great president. So,
I mean, better than some that we could name.
Yeah, well, So, how do you feel Lin-Manuel Miranda did portraying him?
I mean, he did fine.
Is fine what we want to hear from Broadway? Is one way?
Well, of the cast, while he is to be commended and...
While he's a genius, let's just put that right out there.
He is well deserving of everything that he's achieved because he came up with this play.
Concept, writing, music. He is a genius.
Yes.
Okay, let's just get that right out there.
I would say that he's probably one of the weaker performances, singing and acting, in the performance.
Right.
I mean, that's hard to hold against him when the cast is so talented.
Right.
Really? That's like saying...
And for me, it didn't take away anything. I think he absolutely deserved to be the principal role in something that he created that was this astounding. However, given that a lot of people share that, who would you have put in the role of Hamilton? And if you need to steal my idea, that is okay. Just let the podcast know. Because I did.
I honestly don't know if anyone can fill that. It's such the huge shoes to fill.
It is.
Everyone around you is so talented, and it's a cohesive feel. So I don't know who you can plug in there and just have it work.
That's fair. I mean, I would be interested to see some of the other versions, because obviously there have been other versions. He has since backed out, to see how it plays. But for me, I was going to say Santino Fontana. Now, I am biased because I love this man a lot. I've been wanting to see him on Broadway for a while, but some people don't want to take me. So... You're
really going to go through that dirty laundry when I took you to Los Angeles for Christmas.
But I missed his show. But anyway, it was on Frozen. And with, my favorite King George there. Yeah. They were in Frozen together. He has an amazing voice. He's already a Broadway actor. I feel like he would be a good fit.
I mean, that's actually really fair.
You like his voice, don't you?
Yeah, he can sing. He can crush it.
Oh, yeah, he can. If you guys haven't seen Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, he was in the first season. It was a travesty that he was no longer in it after that. But you can hear his voice.
Shit show?
And yes, if you want to look up the song, it was a shit show.
Well, no, you said it was a travesty. I just said it was a shit show.
Okay. But if you want to look up the song, it was a shit show. It's on YouTube. You can hear his voice, and it is phenomenal. Okay, moving on. So we kind of already talked about my favorite character, but do you have a favorite song or character?
I mean, it's so hard.
That's fair.
They're all wonderful. I mean, they're not all wonderful people that they represent, but they are spectacular in the performance. It's like criticizing Da Vinci. Well, that painting's not nearly as good.
I'm not asking to criticize. I'm just asking if there's a favorite. I mean, for me, it's obviously King George's
sarcasm and pettiness.
Yeah, his song.
You'll Be Back.
Yeah, We'll Be Back. That was inspired by
Hugh Laurie.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, I mean, I just want to do the dance moves and the whole thing. Yeah.
I mean, Thomas Jefferson was awesome.
Oh, he was incredible in everything he did. Are you talking about his rap battle at the cabinet?
But yeah, the rap battle in the cabinet was great, even though he got owned by Hamilton.
I don't know.
George Washington. I think George Washington has to be my favorite, though.
Okay. the song where he's like going away, they took the quotes from that song from his actual like letters and speeches, which is amazing.
Well, it just is a supremely precious thing what he did for this country, and it just cannot be stated enough times that George Washington was exactly the right person to be the first president.
Oh, that was touching. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, I mean, a lot of times when we're talking about movies, we don't generally, but people like to talk about camera work, and they like to talk about like framing and all of that kind of stuff. Now, we watched a musical, and that was a Broadway musical. So generally speaking, you're not going to have camera work. It's going to be just right, straight, center. You're watching the show. But that's not how this was, because it was a Disney adaptation, and it was a
live filming, but they had different cameras set up, and it
was set over 2 days, and it was mixed together, and all of that. So, do you think that impacted your viewing of this?
I mean, it's hard to say. I felt they did a very good job of framing it to capture the entire performance, and they weren't doing the close-ups in the whole ensemble numbers. They were doing the close-ups in the focused on the two people on stage. Mm-hmm. So it didn't take a whole lot away from the performance in that respect, but I can understand the purists and the traditionalists being upset about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm conflicted. So, for those of you who don't know, I am very short. So, when I go to a Broadway show, we're also poor. So, we sit very far back, and I'm short. So, what I'm trying to get at is when I go to a Broadway show or off-Broadway show or whatever, I tend to see basically peanuts dancing around on stage. Right. I can't make out their faces, their costumes, pretty much anything. I can just kind of see, like, blurred figures moving around.
And you can kind of hear the words?
Well, so the music tends to be better because there's speakers all around you. So the music does tend to be better. But my point to that was that I appreciate the fact that I could actually see what was going on. I don't know how I would feel differently if I was someone that got, front row seating and got to, like, really see what was going on. But
well, that's being immersed in it, and it's like you're actually there, whereas you're sitting in the background and you're using binoculars like the back row of a football stadium, and you're going, I can't see anything.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've seen many shows, and you do get immersed because the speakers are all around you and everybody's dancing, and you've got the whole whatever, but it is very difficult to see what's going on, and I remember many times being like, are they happy or are they upset? I can't tell. Is it going to be a fight now? I'm not sure.
I went to see Eddie Izzard in a huge arena, and we were in the back, and it was hard to see him, and he had giant televisions on either side of the stage showing his performance, and you almost get sidetracked watching the TV, which is...
They don't do that on...
well, no, but it's just... I can understand being frustrated if you're having to sit in the back of a huge auditorium.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I'm conflicted is what I'll leave that at. Okay. So, this is going to be more for you to talk about because I know nothing about history. But Aaron Burr. Okay, so we can't not talk about him because he's like the other main character. So, like, I feel like it'd be weird if we didn't.
Yeah.
But I think that there are some historical inaccuracies. But I also think that it's important to talk about his character development. And also, like, I thought it was interesting that they introduced him as the stupid person who shot him or something. He said something like that. The damn fool that shot him. And that was how you're introduced. So you knew right off the bat that he regretted his decision.
Right. I mean, it's in the show, he's very much portrayed as the counterpoint to Alexander Hamilton. They're both clearly very bright, and they're both very important to the founding of this country in their own respective way.
I only knew Aaron Burr killed Hamilton. I knew nothing else. So...
I mean, he was the vice president for Thomas Jefferson.
I didn't know that until I researched. Yikes.
Regrettably, I didn't either, actually. But it's... One of them is very cautious and diplomatic in wanting to wait and see where the chips fall before he makes an opinion because he doesn't want to be on the wrong side of an argument. And Hamilton is very much the opposite in that, and he'll come to his conclusion, and he's going to do everything in his power to nudge it the direction that he needs it to go based off his opinion.
Yeah. Now, I believe, from my research, now I could be wrong, that his quote of the smile more, say less. I think that was the quote, or I can't find it. But I think that's the quote. Anyway, it was an actual thing he said. And so I guess my question to you is, how do you think that plays in politics now? Like the idea of, not kind of siding with anything to keep people happy versus Hamilton's way of just kind of coming out and doing what you got to do. Like, which way do you think is more
work,
favored?
but it is a cop out because you're not actually helping anyone by just waiting in the background. Like,
but don't you think that a lot of the politicians nowadays do tend to go that way? I mean,
oh, absolutely.
It
is 100% shifted towards ignoring the question that was asked and going with your own answer to an unrelated question. When you're given a hard question,
don't let them know what you stand for, as Aaron Burr would say.
Like it's in all of the debates. It's well, I want to talk about this. Well, I asked you about you failing at this, but I'm not going to talk about it. Right. So it's kind of.
So you think we've kind of reverted to his version rather than Hamilton's, or not? Because I mean, we do have somebody in office that is the opposite of. I mean, more Hamilton-esque than Burr.
Well, if Hamilton was hit in the head with a hammer.
I meant style of politics, not ideals.
Well, just in terms of mental acuity, like he's dumb. But no, it is that way. It's very polarizing, and that has its own problems. Being polarizing versus diplomatic is not the right answer versus the wrong answer. There's common ground in the middle. You have to have opinions, but you also have to articulate them without alienating other people. Like, you can't shout in someone's face to win an argument and make them agree with you. Right. That will never work.
Agreed.
In customer service, if someone yells at you, you do everything you can to not help them and get them out of your face. Like that, of course.
Of course. So, when you watch a movie, you generally have a hero and a villain. Yeah. Yeah. So, in this, it's real life. So, it's not quite that cut and dry. But if you had to choose, would you say that Aaron Burr is supposed to be a villain? Or do you think, like, what do you think? Like, do you think he's meant to be a villain? Do you think Jefferson maybe was meant to be the villain? Like, what, if you had to choose? Like, obviously it's real life, so it's not that cut and dry, but...
I mean, Aaron Burr is the closest, but, I mean, there's no real good analog for good versus evil in this. It's just people making the decisions that historically shaped this country. And it's not good nor bad. Those are the decisions and that's what happened.
Right. Now, do you want to talk about some of the historical inaccuracies about his character?
I mean, for Aaron Burr, or just in general.
Aaron Burr, for him specifically, because we're talking about him.
I mean, so he didn't shoot Hamilton right after he failed to win the presidency. He had already served as the vice president. Vice president. No, well, he was running for president, but he lost.
And then he didn't get the vice presidency as per the show, but he actually did.
He actually did get the vice presidency for Thomas Jefferson for the first term. And then he tried to win the governorship of New York City years later and lost, and then had a duel with Alexander Hamilton well after the fact.
That's true. So also, it was said that they weren't really friends at the beginning. Like, the beginning stuff was kind of made up. He wasn't second to... I don't remember who the show said he was second to, but he wasn't. I don't remember. But all I know is that the beginning parts were not true. They didn't have that close of a relationship. They barely even knew each other that much at the beginning. So
I mean that's probably fair, given that they were strange men coming together to sit down and agree on what to do. I mean, it was people from all over the states in the country, that was not even a country at that point, coming to meet together to talk about what are we going to do now. Right.
Okay, so is there anything else about Burr you want to discuss?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay. So we already really talked about Hamilton scandal. Yeah. Really. But I did kind of want to talk about a little bit about the love triangle that he had going on.
With his sister-in-law?
Yeah. Now, it's not 100% accurate, but in terms of the show itself, did that part of the show change your opinion of Hamilton at all?
I mean, Not really. And I have a easier time accepting the changes to accuracy in the play than I do for other things that we've seen. Suffragettes comes to mind because they added a fictional person. I have
a conglomerate person. But
exactly. Yeah. It's to ease the narrative, and I understand that, but this is just to change the timeline around a little bit and change a couple minor details that are not really central to the story itself.
I mean, it is a little bit central that she was married and not single. That is a little central. Like, I feel like you're less available when you're married. I mean, if you're not, then you're not. I mean, okay, thanks for letting me know. But I just do think that's a little central.
It is, but at the same time, it has less to do with historical relevance than him writing the Federalist Papers. If they excluded or changed some of the influence that he had in developing our country.
Okay.
I would have had a bigger problem with that than changes to his personal life.
Right. Now, did you know about his reputation of being a ladies' man or whatever we want to call it before this?
So I had, admittedly, my sister the one who went to Hamilton on Broadway, went to Hamilton College, which is named after Alexander Hamilton.
Okay.
So we had already been a little bit more familiar with Hamilton than the average person, I would imagine. So I had heard those things previously.
I heard those things as in?
That he was a bit of a free-for-all man about town.
Yeah. So from what I read, that's actually not true. He did have an affair, as we see in the show, and he did make it very public, which, I mean, can we talk about that for a second? That's never okay. If you expected your wife to accept your apology, maybe don't announce it to the whole world.
I mean, he did it because he was basically backed into a corner.
Oh, no. He did it to save himself. He didn't care about anybody else's feelings. He did it to save himself.
Well, he did it because the husband was trying to tie him to other crimes that were related
embezzlement.
Stealing. So he wanted to clear the record and say, no, I'm not stealing, I'm just...
He didn't have to do that. He had already proven that he wasn't stealing, and everybody had said they weren't going to do anything about it, but he decided, just in case, he's going to get ahead of it all, and he's going to save himself.
I mean, I don't know if I would do that, but I also don't expect to cheat on my wife in the first place. So
I sure hope not. Goodness gracious. So,
I wrote down, it's not that hard to not cheat on your wife, man.
Aww. Every once in a while you have good moments. I mean, the bar is set pretty low apparently. But, okay, so at least we learned a little bit about Hamilton throughout all of this. Do you think it was easier to follow this as, like, almost, I feel like, Schoolhouse Rock style, like, trendy music that we enjoy? Or do you think you would have liked it better as a movie? Because they have considered doing a live action version of this.
So, I'm torn. Because the only live action musical that I can think of that I've seen is the most recent version of Les Mis with Hugh Jackman and
Never seen it, but
everyone.
Okay. True.
And by and large, the performances in that were fine, with the exception of Russell Crowe, who can't sing to save his life. He's
can't even picture that, but okay.
Probably marginally better at singing than I am.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, then that's not saying anything at all.
But I enjoyed that because the rest of the cast can sing. So okay. I would have probably preferred a live action musical adaptation rather than just a live taping of the Broadway performance.
Right. I
just because if you put everything into context in terms of looking the part on set, all of the costuming is perfected and everything is set that way. Mm-hmm. I would have felt more involved and engaged in the story.
That makes sense. Okay, so the last kind of thing I want to talk about before we kind of talk about his inspirations for this would be Eliza.
Yeah.
So I'm not generally one that really goes for the sappy character, and I will say she was the romantic sappy character of this whole thing.
Yep.
So I didn't gravitate towards her during the show. Great actress and great music and all of that and great singing, but too sappy for me. Like, you're needy and you're all over your husband, whatever. However, when I read about her, this girl is amazing. Like, first of all, in the show, which made me research her, they said, I lived 50 years beyond him. And I was counting on my fingers going, her son was 19 and she lived 50 years. So she had to have been, and I'm doing all the math here. And then we looked it up and she was 97 years old when she died.
Yep.
From the 1800s, this girl lived to
1700s into the 1800s.
Yeah, okay.
So she passed centuries.
Like, incredible. But she was also an incredible human being. She opened a foster home.
It was one of the first orphanages in New York City.
And she became the lead director of it. She was a very social activist, I guess we can say.
Right. So prior to the government having stepped in for a lot of social programs, it was really up to private citizens and the wealthy to donate to charity and make the life bearable for the working poor. Mm-hmm. And so it was just kind of a thing that you did if you were a good person, you had the money.
Yeah, well,
because you had nothing else to do.
But she seemed like she was also a good person, and
yes.
she never remarried, and she devoted a lot of her life to getting Hamilton's legacy out there. I think she got his papers, his like letters and stuff, memorialized somewhere. I don't remember where, but she made the effort to make sure that they remained intact and with.
I mean, I would imagine that she has or had a hand in getting them into the Library of Congress.
Yeah. If
I were to guess.
Yeah. So, anyways, I just needed to say how amazing this woman was, and I mean, the show doesn't really pass the Bechdel test because they only ever talk about Hamilton when the two girls talk and, whatever. But I'm okay with it in this because I feel like this is supposed to be centered around Hamilton and that having offshoot conversations is a little bit weird. So I'm fine with it.
Well, it's also a period piece, and back then, men made the decisions. That's not to say that that's the right way to do things. That's just saying that's how it was.
Right.
And it's about all the men that made the decisions. That's what it's about.
Right. Since you said it's a period piece, we do have to acknowledge that it is a culturally diverse cast.
Yes.
Now, that was obviously very intentional, but did that impact at all how you watched this?
No, I didn't have a problem with the cast because they're all spectacular. There's no reason that any of the cast members shouldn't have been chosen because they all killed it. I
actually enjoy that he also said he would be perfectly okay with the Founding Fathers being played by a woman, which I thought was really cool too. Like,
well, this is the truest concept of all people are created equal, and the best person, regardless of all irrelevant, trivial details, gets the job. Like, that's...
I 1,000% agree.
True equality is that, okay, this person is the best fit, so they get it.
Yeah.
Done. Doesn't matter.
Generally in movies and things like that, when you depict somebody, you'd usually pick somebody who looks the closest to said person. And in this case, that didn't happen, but it didn't take away from anything to me. I mean, part of that for me anyways is that I really don't know what the Founding Fathers look like, so...
You have to know what George Washington looks like.
I mean, I have a vague idea of, yes, the wooden teeth and the hair, but...
He's on the dollar bill.
Yeah, the hair.
You have to know what Thomas Jefferson looks like. He's on the nickel.
Yeah, but, like, if... Without that in front of me, I don't have, like a this is that person. Like, it's not like somebody living right now that I can go and, like, look at and be like, okay, but you're not... It's not like that. So that's part of it. But I think the other part of it is they were so good. Like, I mean, they acted so well that... You didn't stop to think about that.
I wasn't hung up on that part of it. I was hung up on the damn they are killing it. This is spectacular.
Right.
And it just kind of the tremendousness of their performance kind of overshadows everything else that doesn't matter. Like,
I 1,000% agree. I was just curious how you felt.
Yeah.
So I did want to quickly mention inspirations for this were all over, like, I mean, everywhere, but when you start reading them, you realize this man is our age. But so, to name a few, West Wing, which we talk about a lot in podcasts, but there are some direct quotes from West Wing, such as, "I'm looking for a mind," that Sam Seaborn says to Ainsley Hughes, and that is also a line.
Ainsley Hayes.
Ainsley Hayes, I'm sorry. I wrote it weird and I couldn't read my writing. So that's one of them. Another thing is Harry Potter. The tempo for the opening song is based on that.
Right.
Obviously, I already mentioned "You'll Be Back" was based on something that Hugh Laurie had said to him when Lin-Manuel
Miranda.
Yes, was working on House, and they were talking about it. But so those were some of them. I think there were more too, but I don't think I wrote everything down. But anyway, he's obviously our age. We did look it up, and he is 40.
Yeah. So slightly older, but it's still.
He's still in our circle. You know what I'm saying? All right, we're going to talk about controversies. We're going to do it because we have to.
There's a few.
So let's start with the one that happened while it was still on stage, and it wasn't, we're all in Corona and we can't have Broadway right now.
So the one that was a controversy that shouldn't have been a controversy?
It wasn't controversial, but some people made it controversial.
The non-controversial thing that was made controversial by a certain moron.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Go. Are you talking about the cast of Hamilton addressing Vice President-elect Mike Pence with their concerns about the rhetoric of both Mike Pence and Donald Trump and the divisiveness that they brought to the office?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. So let's go. Come on.
So it was addressing him and saying, we want you to make sure that you're protecting all Americans' inalienable rights, not just the people that agree with you, because that is not what this American idea is based on. Like, this grand experiment that we have in this country is not based on, well, you're more important than that person.
Right.
So I don't think that's controversial at all, and they were very polite about it. They said, don't boo. They were...
Well, right, but why did it become a controversy?
Well, because the person that was his boss, Donald Trump, decides to make a controversy of literally everything, even if it makes him look like a moron.
Yeah,
which it invariably always does.
Okay. I would like just facts, okay, not emotions here. So he tweeted about it, and he basically demanded an apology, which didn't go well, and it became this whole thing. So, I mean, if you haven't seen the speech, it's on YouTube. It is not a bad speech. They're just basically voicing their concerns, which is fair given the state of the world. But
yeah, I mean, also him saying stupid things is a fact. Like, that is true.
Yes. Okay. Are you?
I'm done with that. Yeah.
Okay. Good. So now we should talk about the controversy that's current.
Okay.
So I'm sure if you guys have been watching this on Disney Plus, you are aware that it was released and controversy kind of erupted almost immediately. So some people are stating that the reason that is because the only people that got to see it were not culturally diverse people. I have no idea what the reasoning is. But the controversy basically states that the show glossed over some of the more problematic parts of history, such as Hamilton marrying into a slave-owning family, also helping his in-laws procure slaves, and also George Washington owning slaves. And there were more, but those were like the main
Thomas Jefferson
focus.
Also, or everyone from
they did mention Thomas Jefferson, but just kind of not talking about the fact that the 3/5 compromise was put into the Declaration. They made it seem Constitution. I'm sorry. They made it seem like they said that Hamilton was against slavery, especially in the rap battle when he's dissing on Jefferson for it.
It is listed that he was an abolitionist, which means he was an opponent of slavery, but it's kind of a gray area given that the time that this occurred is not a great time for that conversation.
Right.
Because it's a blight on our national history.
Yes. So basically what people were saying is they felt that this was a group of... The word used on the internet was a group of minorities was whitewashing...
History.
And basically retelling a white story that doesn't need to be told because of the problematic things that happened. So there is a documentary type thing on Disney Plus now called Hamilton History Has Its Eyes on You, and they do address some of this and the reasons why, a lot of being that there isn't enough time to discuss all of the problems.
Right.
They did try to show Hamilton as a problematic character, but they didn't have the time to address all of it. They also said that one of the reasons that they had such a diverse cast was to try to show that this is more of a representation of America today versus back then, and that was something they were trying to make an effort for, but they said it's a larger conversation. They were hoping that this would be an opening for a conversation, not the be-all, end-all of the conversation. Right. So, I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about it?
I mean, that's entirely fair. I mean, not everything is always the time and the place to have that conversation. We have to have a meaningful conversation about racial inequality in this country, and it has been hundreds of years overdue, but a play is not the right place for that. Like, we need meaningful action in the halls of government that this focuses on to enact real change. That's considerably more important, and we do that by electing people that are willing to try to make change. Like, we have to get rid of the people that are stuck in the past.
Right. Yeah, I think it's tough because, so if this were a movie, right, if it was fictional, it wasn't true, and they were to add in stuff about slavery and all that kind of stuff, if it was movie and fictional, you'd be like, okay, but what did that have to do with what we're talking about right now? We're talking about why he got killed. We're talking about how did those two things...
We're talking about the birth of this country that all these people are involved in, and...
Well, the birth of the country, okay, but like more like the journey of how he ended up getting killed really wasn't impacted by that. So we would have looked at it as, okay, so you added that in to be scandalous? Like, why did you add that in? Now, it's true. It's a true story, and true stories have a lot more to it, and there's a lot more pieces to the puzzle. But you can't put all of that into a play. Maybe you could have had like a series of plays that dealt with different topics of what Hamilton did or something like that. Or if you were focusing on maybe, say, Jefferson, that would be a larger portion. But...
Well, I had read that Lin-Manuel Miranda was actually originally trying to do this style performance about Abraham Lincoln. He only changed his mind because of the movie Lincoln that came out right around...
Spielberg, he said, right?
Right, exactly. And so... I'm all for him doing an adaptation of...
All the Founding Fathers? I'm down.
Well, Lincoln's not a Founding Father, but...
But I want him to do all the Founding Fathers. What I want him to do.
To do
he's already done with
other
Lincoln.
snippets in history. The whole ratifying the 19th Amendment, ratifying...
I'd watch all of them. This is like Schoolhouse Rock, but modernized. I'm down.
That's what I'm saying. And that's what we need in this country to get back to an understanding of our responsibility, in that we are the one that choose the people that govern us, and we have responsibility to get rid of the jackass.
Oh boy. Okay,
or
so...
every jackass that holds office.
Yeah, okay, so anyway, that is all I have, because now I'm uncomfortable. So do you want to move to your history minute? And please make sure it's about history and not current events. Thank you.
Tyler's History Minute.
So I have, admittedly, a few.
Okay, yeah, well, we knew.
So, first off, because we live in Massachusetts, duels, which are a point in this movie, are technically not illegal under certain circumstances. So, theoretically, in Massachusetts, you can have a duel to the death, provided that it's on a town common, on a Sunday, and the governor is in town.
I mean, that's kind of current events, and I kind of said don't do current events, but okay, I'll let it pass. It's fine.
So, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson died on the same day.
Really?
Yes.
What day?
July 4th.
Weird.
Yeah, I know. It's just one of those things. And John Adams says at least Jefferson is alive, even though he had died, but he didn't know because they lived in different states.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Let's see. So the Federalist Papers, which were referenced quite a bit, are kind of an interesting and often overlooked point in history.
Okay.
So it was basically making the case for why we need a stronger federal government, because they had tried a Continental Congress which had no real authority, no ability to raise taxes and govern, and it sucked. It was just a nightmare. Mm-hmm. And so they came out with the Constitution that we have now, and people were arguing that we should do it, should not do it, and it was kind of the hot button issue of the day. And so Alexander Hamilton took it upon himself, because he was a believer that having a more centralized government would provide a better long-term solution, because there are certain things that states can't do. So he wrote quite a few of them, and it struck me, because I read several of them, that he wrote, I'm going to try to make the argument so that you can make an informed decision for yourself. You don't ever win an argument by persecuting the person, which is basically you don't ever win an argument by shouting, you're stupid, you have to listen to me. And it's just a tremendous turning point in our country that we then ratified that. He was the, all right, darling, don't gloss your eyes over and just stop listening. Thank you for that. He was the first Secretary of the Treasury. Mm-hmm. He was directly responsible for instituting the U.S. Mint and establishing or working to establish a national bank.
Of course you'd bring this up. Boring finance man.
He was directly involved in the Revolutionary War. So when the Revolutionary War started, the British invaded New York, and they basically kicked George Washington's ass straight out of New York, and they had to retreat. Hamilton basically stole a bunch of British cannons and started shooting them. I mean, that's a ballsy move.
That is.
He was then involved in the Battle of Yorktown, which is the end of the war, where he was in charge of taking out one of the fortifications around Yorktown, and he did it with bayonets because they didn't want to shoot people to then make noise and say, oh, we're attacking now.
Smart.
Yeah. And then, yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
That's the whole history minute? Wow, I'm impressed. I thought we were going to go on for another 20 minutes.
Well, I have other things I can talk about, but
we're good. We're good. We're almost at an hour. We're good. Okay. So, audience asks.
Audience asks.
I was hopeful that people were going to have more, but...
How do we not have more for Hamilton? It was the sensation...
people don't like us anymore. We don't have fans. So, Mazel Tov Movie Time had 2 questions, which we're going to answer both because we haven't had questions in a while. So the first one was, how do you feel taping of a live production can enhance or hinder its resonance on a viewer's perspective? Well, we kind of answered that, right?
I think it does. It doesn't really hurt my viewing experience to be able to be changing the shots and doing the close-ups, only because when we ever go to a performance, we're in the back row and we can't see anything.
Because we're poor. Yeah. He also asked, would Hamilton have been as widely acclaimed and celebrated had it been adopted or designed for the silver screen?
So, I mean, that's a hard answer because they would have had to have basically done a live-action version.
Right, and they would have had to change some things, and I feel...
I mean, it would also have been like a 4-hour movie because there would have been dialogue rather than just the songs.
Right. And it's also a different bar that you're living up to. Yeah. I mean, the cinematography comes into play, and this... Well,
because it's the Revolution, you're expected to have some kind of George Washington battle scene. And...
Yeah, there's just a whole different dynamic. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it would depend on how it was done, right? So, I don't know. Positivity Wolf asked, why is it so popular? And can you say anything about it that will make me actually want to watch it?
Watch it. It's a fantastic music. Like the songs are tremendously catchy.
Oh yeah.
And everyone belts it. Like they just
I think it's so popular because it's a musical that even people who don't like musicals can get into because it has history, it has all different types of music. Like it's mostly rap, but they're all different influences. Like, I mean, Jefferson has jazz influence, and
Eliza has the more singing, and then also Angelica is traditionally singing, like just
right. And King George has the British pop influence.
Yeah.
Like, it's all different things. And it's really cool to be able to pick it out. So I think there's something for everybody. There's
right.
like, I mean, I gravitate towards King George because I really like the villains. So there's a character for everybody to kind of like get behind, and there's all.
Well, there's also really good depth, which you don't always get with a movie. Like movies, sometimes it's a character on a page, and the person that wrote it doesn't have any real skill to write dialogue or build out a backstory or
right. And it's as historically accurate as you get when it comes to movies and shows and stuff. I mean, you always have to take some creative liberties, but I mean, it's pretty spot on, and it's very interesting. So
right.
I feel like, yes, watch it, because like, why not? It's free right now.
Yeah.
And it's
also, you're saying that to be that guy, so shut
right.
up and watch it.
Right. So just shut up and watch it. Okay, so lastly, and the only reason we're doing extras is because we've lacked on audience asks.
Like 4 weeks in a row, it's been 1 or 0.
Right. So the Contrarian said, how many historical inaccuracies will Tyler find, and will that affect your enjoyment of the movie and show? So while you were watching it, did you notice many?
Not really. I mean, I was pretty sure that Alexander Hamilton was shot by Aaron Burr well after the being massively involved in the political landscape.
Right.
I mean, I'd known that Alexander Hamilton was heavily involved as it relates to George Washington. Like, I didn't have a lot of the basics.
Right.
So
it didn't really affect you, right?
No, it was, I mean, for the most part, there's not a whole lot of inaccuracies. I mean, there's changes to the timeline, and there's changes to some of the minor insignificant personal details, but for the most part, it's on point.
Yeah. And now on my end, what I will say is, for the most part, when we watch historical movies, Tyler doesn't insert much historical context unless it's like something really cool that he has to like get out. But like, other than that, like, he doesn't tell me things unless I ask, so it doesn't necessarily affect.
Well, I don't want to try to interject on a moment unless you ask because you're confused or you just didn't understand something.
Yes. With the exception of if there's some kind of current thing that just happened, you're like, oh my god, let me tell you about this thing.
Right.
That's the only time. But when it's like something history based, usually the most annoying thing that would happen would be he'd be staring at me waiting for a response because he knows like what's about to happen. So that's about it.
I mean, it's just, to me, saying something in the middle of that kind of ruins the moment. So I try to, when I can, shut up.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But so it didn't really for us ruin it. Now, there are historical movies that you can tell he's seething in on comfort because he's just like, I already know there has to be something wrong because he's just seething. This did not happen.
Right.
So there's that.
So when the glaring changes or something that just is crazy happens and you're like, come on.
Right.
I'm dying a little bit, but I still try to stop talking.
Yeah, you just can't hide anything. But okay, so that's all of our audience asks. So do you want to tell us the reviews?
Reviews.
Yeah. So Rotten Tomatoes has it at 99.
Dang, we usually do the bottom of the barrel, and we moved up for this. Look at us go.
Coming up in the world. Audience score of 91, so also incredibly high. This might be one of the most highly regarded things that we've done.
Good for us.
With maybe the exception of 12 Angry Men. Because
Okay,
like,
but
that's up there as well.
Fantastic too.
Right. So this is 9.7, like it's 9.5, 9.7. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's great across the board.
I was gonna give it a 9 too. I mean, I would go even higher. The only caveat that I don't give it higher is just because I didn't see it live. Like, I feel like if I saw it live, like,
I'm a little bit, it loses a half point to a point because
I'm salty that I didn't get to see it live.
Thank you. Yep, that's
That's basically how it is. So basically, you had a 10, but you didn't give me a ticket, so you lost it. Should have been quicker than that. Anyway,
We are selfish, petty, spiteful people.
Yes, we are.
The both of
and
us.
I'm totally fine with admitting it. But anyway, okay, so you guys have been sitting with us for an hour, and that's just, I'm so sorry. The next one will be short because
It has to be.
we've decided that we have done a heavy topic, and then we did this, which we knew was going to be very long because Tyler loves history. So
We chose a lighthearted movie. It's your choice.
We did. Well, I did an audience pick.
Right.
So I picked Perfect Date, which was recommended to us by Nomcast, and they recommended it to us because we had asked at one point for the current day version of a heartthrob, and they said that the guy in this movie, which we don't know, I forget his name even, it's like Noah Centorino or something. I don't know. We don't know him. We've never seen him before. But we were told that he is kind of like the modern day heartthrob, and he's in a lot of Netflix movies, and so we're gonna check it out and see. It doesn't look horrible. It looks like it
looks like a lighthearted, fluffy teenage rom-com movie. Like it's the tale as old as time.
Yeah.
Like it's the same story that we've seen however many thousands of times in other movies.
Yes, but it's the movie that you need us to do so you get a break from the long diatribe of History Minutes. So we're doing that for you because I'm sad to tell you that this break won't last long. So enjoy it.
History will be back on the menu.
Yeah, Tyler gets choices every other week. Remember that when you're choosing which episodes to listen to. Just saying.
Wow.
Anyway, so if you guys want to listen to us outside the podcast or talk to us, not listen to us. I mean, you could listen to me too, I guess. But we have Twitter. I'm at CinematicallyC. Tyler is Blame Tyler CC. If you want to reach him, you need to make sure you tag me. I say that just because some people don't know.
I don't ever go on social media ever for any reason.
Unless I say, Tyler, you need to get on social media.
Yeah.
So if you've ever gotten a response from him, it's probably because I walked over and put his phone in front of him and said to get on Twitter.
Or just kicked me.
One of the two. We also have email, cinematicallycorrect@gmail.com. I will generally respond to anybody who reaches out. And we're on anything else you want to find us on. If you look up Cinematically See, you will find every platform you can think of. We're on it. So yeah, there's that. So we will be back next week. Thank you to Jake at Athos Music for our intro and outro music. And we'll be back next week with Perfect Date.
All right, thank you for listening.